Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Laura Huffman, and I am the president and CEO of the Austin Chamber. I'm really excited about today's program. It is extremely important that we talk about education today, in particular with the year and a half that we've had. And right now, creating opportunities for students, families, and employers, it's such an important conversation. So, how higher education is kickstarting the Central Texas economy is the subject today. At the Chamber, our mission is to help people live, work, and thrive in Austin, whether through job generation, high growth entrepreneurship, or working with our outstanding partners in education. And you're going to hear from a bunch of them today to create opportunity for students, families, and our workforce. And I can tell you that every time we talk to major employers, or small businesses in Austin, the number one thing on people's mind is how can we recruit, attract, and retain local talent. So the work that these folks are doing is extremely important here in our region. We're delighted to have you all here for this conversation. The work that we do with our partners in higher education to build workforce is just extremely important. So today you're going to hear from our friends at Austin Community College. You're going to hear from Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, Texas Workforce Commission, and the state legislature. So this panel is going to pack a punch for you. I want to thank our speakers for joining today. I know how busy you all are, but the work that you do matches the work that we do, and we're just extremely grateful for your time today. And I want to thank the partners that help make this program possible today. So thank you to our pivotal partners. There you are. Amazon, Ascension, Seton, Dell, PIMCO, Wells Fargo, and our foundation partners. You can see the list there. So many corporate partners I'd like to recognize. That's a crew that's been with us all through 2020 and 2021. And I'd also like to thank the sponsors that made today's event possible. We've got corporate sustainers. There you are again, Amazon, HNTB, Texas Gas Service, our capital sustainers, as well as our supporting sustainers. And the sponsor for today's event specifically is Austin Community College. And I want to take a moment here to recognize and thank and welcome Dr. Rhodes, who is the chancellor at Austin Community College, who's going to lead today's discussion. Dr. Rhodes, the work that you're doing is so incredibly important. And by the way, congratulations on the recognition that you received from Boy Scouts last week. It was fun to see up on stage. Since joining the Austin Community College District in September 2011, Dr. Rhodes has worked to improve pathways into higher education, strengthen awareness of the community college mission. He's done that in spades, by the way, and give students the tools to accomplish their educational, professional, and personal goals. Through this work, Dr. Rhodes' passion for the community shines, and the Chamber is grateful for his partnership. And I would say the work that you're doing is just amazing. I think this is the renaissance for community colleges, not just in this region, but throughout the state. And we are so grateful that you are here. You're the right person at the right time at Austin Community College. So Dr. Rhodes, welcome and thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for that kind introduction. And thank you for the great work that you're doing in Central Texas. You're making a difference, and you and your team are doing just amazing work for the Austin area. So thank you for yours. First I want to go through and kind of do a level set, and I'm going to go through a few slides with you and just put into context what our conversation is going to be today. And so, Lacey, if you can kind of pull up those slides, I'd appreciate it. And if you can go to the next one. The reason I show this, and this is courtesy of the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, but it is to show you that, what happened about a year ago from today is all of a sudden, this is the job postings in the Central Texas area. As a result of the pandemic, we showed a sharp decline in the numbers of job postings, the numbers of people who were losing jobs. But as you can see at the end, looking at today, you can see that the economy is becoming, it's coming back to life. It's robust, what's happening here in Central Texas. And if you can go to the next slide. What is ACC trying to do about this? One of the things is we've been focused on short-term fast-track training, and that is to reskill and upskill the people in our community. And to do that, we identified 26 different programs where individuals can take a program of study in 6 months or less and get the right skill sets to get right back into the workforce as quickly as possible. And to help accommodate that, then we reduce the cost. We cut the cost in half for those 26 programs. And it's things like certified production technician. It's in healthcare work and experience and manufacturing and IT. So how do we get people back into the economy working as quickly as possible? If you can go to the next slide, Lacey. There is in the legislature, there is a bill called the True Initiative. And the True Initiative stands for Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Through Education. And what we're really trying to do through that is really take a look at how can we work with the employers, how can we work with the chambers, with Workforce Solutions, with our partners, and make sure that community members who are displaced or unemployed, who need upskilling, can get that as quickly as possible. And so what we've asked through a couple of different bills. One is Senate Bill 1102, sponsored by Senator Creighton, and House Bill 33003, sponsored by Representative Parker, is to actually set aside through appropriations $50 million that will help community colleges in the fast track process across the entire state to get those, just as we talked about, how do we get them back into the right skill sets to get back into the workforce quickly? Lacey, if you can go to the next slide. This is, again, looking at that very first slide I showed you, but you know, the economy is recovering quickly, but some of the skill sets necessary for individuals when they come back out of the pandemic are different. But again, you know, we're really focused on where are the high demand skills jobs that are being posted, and you're finding it in the health careers programs, in IT, in skilled trades, in manufacturing. They're all coming back to life. You know, the hardest hit during this period of time has been, of course, you know, hospitality, restaurants, retail. And so how do we help them get back up through training and retraining? So if you'll go to the next slide, Lacey. And the reason I show this slide is because during the Great Recession that was occurred during the 08-09 timeframe, you saw a drop in community college enrollments across the country. And within 18 to 24 months, we saw tremendous spikes in the numbers of students who were coming back. Well, during this pandemic, community colleges across the country saw a drop in enrollment of about 10% on average across the state of Texas and the country. If this follows the same pattern as the Great Recession, we will see spikes in the numbers of students coming back for training, retraining to get the right skill sets. And that's what we're already seeing is that's happening faster than that 18 to 24 month period. And so we expect that during the summer and starting in the next fall, we're going to see some strong growth in the numbers of students coming back to college and universities. So if you can go to the next slide, this is, I guess I kind of put this up as a bragging point. Yesterday at our ACC Rio Grande campus, we had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, who is there for a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Army Futures Command Software Factory. And one of the things we talk about at Austin Community College is we say innovation plus collaboration will result in transformation of our community. this is one of those collaborative partners that's so innovative, cutting edge, IT and software development that connects between Austin Community College and many industry partners, but led through the Army Futures Command. General Murray, I can just tell you, has just been phenomenal. So let's move on to our panel. And we have with us today, we're so fortunate that today we have the Commissioner of Higher Education, Harrison Keller. And I'll start with Harrison. Harrison, if you could just spend a couple of minutes just telling us a little bit about yourself and what's going on, what's happening at the Higher Ed Coordinating Board right now.
Right. Well, great to see you, Richard, and appreciate the conversation today. There's a lot going on. So I've only been in this role as commissioner for the past 18 months or so. Of course, I had the privilege of being knowing and getting to work with Richard in a number of previous capacities at the Capitol and as a university administrator over the years. And so I can vouch personally for the depth of his commitment and his innovative mindset. At the coordinating board, we've been involved in a major realignment of the agency. One of my commitments as commissioner is that we needed to shift from more of a traditional, more regulatory mindset to being more of a resource, being more of a partner with our institutions, with our policymakers, and also with employers. And so we have a ton of initiatives underway. I can talk a little bit more about them, but especially around our data infrastructure and what kind of data we collect and share back to help inform decisions. We're standing a lot of new work around digital learning. Of course, that's been a hot topic this last year with the institutions, and of course around workforce education. As you mentioned, Richard, it's hard to overstate the impact of COVID-19 on Texas and on our communities. We've had millions of people file for unemployment, hundreds of thousands of folks who are going to need to reskill and upskill to get back on their feet, get back in the economy, and higher education is going to be the point of the spear for that economic recovery. So we want to partner with our institutions, make sure that we've got the right kind of policies in place and the resources are going to be there so we can expand opportunities for those individual Texans and make sure that Texas is going to be competitive into the future.
Great. And Harrison, I just have to tell you, I was on a conference call yesterday with Senator Jane Nelson, who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee. And she referenced that earlier in the session when you testified that you said higher education is the point of the spear for economic recovery. And she highlighted that with us yesterday. So
great to hear.
Thanks for talking about that. Next, we have with us Aaron Demerson, who is Commissioner for the Texas Workforce Commission. And welcome to the conversation, Aaron. It's good to see you. And I was telling people earlier, I'm surprised that I don't see you in a tracksuit out, running this morning.
Dr. Rhodes, thank you.
So,
I had a little bit of a delay there. Dr. Rhodes, thank you for the opportunity. Laura, let me just, first of all, to the Austin Chamber, thank you guys for allowing us an opportunity. And Laura, thank you. Congratulations on what you've been able to achieve in such a short time frame. Dr. Rhodes, in Texas, it ain't bragging if it's true. That award, what you guys are doing is the fact of the matter. It's something that's you should be very proud of. And congratulations on what you're doing. I have 2 Boy Scouts. They're Eagle Scouts, as a matter of fact. And so that award that they've given you means a lot from that standpoint. Here at the Workforce Commission, we've been very busy, and that's probably an understatement in that regard. As Commissioner Keller had mentioned, tons of layoffs in certain industries and the like, and we've had our hands full trying to make a difference in that standpoint. We've actually have increased our call centers from 4 to 8, increased our hours, and making sure that we're answering questions that our constituents have. I actually have an opportunity to represent the commissioner as representing the employers. In that regard, I represent over 587,000 Texas employers, 2.6 million small businesses. And my role is to make sure that we advocate and try to make a difference in regards to their needs. And so I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have. And again, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to participate.
Well, and Aaron, let me assure you, you are making a difference. And we love working with you. So next on our panel,
Thank you.
We have Jeff Frazier. And Jeff is the chief of staff for Representative Terry Wilson, who we are fortunate enough to have as the chairperson of the House Appropriations Committee. And Jeff, you're with us. Originally, Terry was going to be with us, but we know that the appropriations bills they're going fast. And so he's very busy. So he's on the floor right now. So Jeff, I want to say thank you for joining us. And, can you just tell us a little bit about what's going on in the legislative process through Representative Wilson's area?
Certainly. So a large part of what we have going now is that the budget has made its way through the committee process. We break the budget up into 4 main sections, grouping a bunch of the different functions of government together. Public education and higher education come together into Article 3 of the budget. And we run that through the subcommittee. So that'll be typically 5 to 8 legislators that look through the in depth in that one section, and we interview and go through and have hearings, listen to every higher education institution in the state. Listen to Texas Education Agency came in, did extensive presentations on that, and then we listen to the members and talk through, and then we pass any amendments that we want to make to the base budget directly in as a committee, and then vote that out to the full committee, which then votes the budget, then approves the subcommittee's report and puts that forward to the rest of the group, to the rest of the legislature. And that is where we are right now. The full budget has been assembled. The Senate has sent over their budget. They've already done their version. They've sent it over to us, and we sort of swap out theirs for ours for this time. And then we're going to bring that to the floor of the House next week. And every member of the House will be bringing forth amendments, changes, things that they want to see do, things that are important to them and to their districts, and then we'll hash that out. That usually goes pretty long. We'll probably be here till 1, 2 a.m. Typically is a long budget night here at the Capitol. And but then once the House has its budget finalized, we'll meet with the Senate in conference, and typically that's the leaders of the budget on each side will come together and hash out the differences between the two versions, and then they'll bring a unified version of the budget called the Conference Committee Report back to the legislature. Typically, that's right near the end of session in mid to late May, and then we'll hash that out and then approve that. And if we do, we get a budget, and if not, it's going to be a long summer.
We have our fingers crossed. It's going to be a budget. So with that, I'd like to start out and ask a few questions. I think I'll start with you, Harrison, if you don't mind. And can you just speak broadly about the role of the coordinating board has played so far in the response to the pandemic and its impacts on higher education?
So our primary role through the pandemic has been to be a resource for the institutions. So we're stay in regular touch with the institution during the pandemic. I know the community colleges had weekly, sometimes more often, call, and so either I or one of my deputies participated in I think almost all of those calls, just to stay in close touch, and also regular calls with chancellors, presidents, to try to get a sense of what folks needed, where the points of friction were, what folks were worried about. And then second, there are some places that we've been able to clear some brush, provide some regulatory flexibility. There are some things that are in my authority, or where we were able to work with the governor's office to be able to waive some regulations as everybody was moving fast to try to make sure they could keep students and faculty and staff safe on campus and transition rapidly to online learning in particular. But then also I've been working closely with institutions and policymakers to advocate for the resources we need. So like I was delighted. One example last summer is one of the first commitments of more discretionary federal CARES Act dollars was the governor and legislative leadership committed $175 million to higher education last summer. That was really important on multiple fronts. For one thing, it enabled us to insulate our state financial aid programs for universities, community colleges from coronavirus-related budget cuts. And then on top of that, we were able to get another $46.5 million for emergency financial aid because we had tens of thousands of students who were suddenly at risk of dropping out and having trouble paying their bills. And so we were able to get funding out to serve about 60,000 students to help keep them on track, help keep them enrolled. And then I was particularly pleased that we were also able to secure $46.5 million for financial aid specifically around reskilling and upskilling. So the kind of short-term workforce credentials that you were talking about earlier, Richard, that are so important for helping people get back on their feet. A lot of times there's not much financial aid that's available for that. And so there was some early investment and commitment by the state. Texas Workforce Commission, I have to call it, has been a very good, very close partner with us throughout. And I really appreciate Aaron and his colleagues at the Texas Workforce Commission. We've got we're very good informal communications constantly back and forth between the agencies, and our teams work really well together. That's critical, especially as we're talking about things around reskilling, upskilling, being able to get people back to work. There were a couple of other things that we were also able to secure some funding for that I'm excited about, not just for the near term, but for the longer term. One is around digital learning. So we were able to get funding for open educational resources, for frequently transferred core courses, for courses that are college readiness courses. So we have a lot of students that might need additional support. So of course, ACC has been one of the national leaders in reforming the remedial education, and then also materials for workforce education that connect to these reskilling skilling programs. And then finally, commitment of funding around modernizing our state's educational and workforce data infrastructure. So we're leading a major initiative now as part of our tri-agency partnership with the Workforce Commission and Texas Education Agency to modernize our education and workforce data infrastructure. But even more importantly, our focus is on user-centered design. So how do we reflect data back to the institutions, to the chambers, to employers, to policymakers, and most importantly, to students and their families who are trying to make decisions. So folks know about what the opportunities are that are available, what potential resources are that they might tap into. I'm very excited about, very enthusiastic about that work. We're moving very fast on that project, and frankly, are a year ahead of where I might have hoped to be because of that close partnership among the institutions and with our fellow agencies in the Tri-Agency Initiative.
Yeah, Harrison, I just want to tell you how thankful and how appreciative we are of all of the hard work that you've done. We are so blessed to have you in that role. But I just have to tell everybody that, when the pandemic broke out, Harrison and his whole team, Ray Martinez, were on almost, it seemed like daily calls to kind of assess where we were headed, and what type of help you could bring to us. Because students, I was on a call this past weekend, and three things that people want to know before they go back into higher education is, how am I going to pay for it? And you talked about that with, different ways of financial aid and awareness, literacy awareness on how they're going to pay for college. How am I going to take the time? I have a family. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to do this. I've got to balance all these things. How am I going to fit the time to go back into school? And then ultimately, what is the return on investment when I do go back to school? How's it going to pay off for me? So I just want to say thank you. I am so pleased that you're in that role. So, thanks for all your help. So Aaron, can I get you to talk a little bit about TWC and how you're collaborating with community colleges and specifically, I'm biased, specifically about ACC.
Yes. And Dr. Rhodes, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm hearing some of the questions and I'm kind of coming in and out. And so in regards to collaborating with community colleges, that's what we do here at the Workforce Commission.
Yes.
Along years ago, we actually discovered that community colleges were where we needed to be in regards to taking care of business with training. And so a number of the initiatives that we have here at the Workforce Commission, our Skills Development Fund program, which is a customized a training program. We work with community colleges statewide to ensure that employers have an opportunity to take advantage of those programs. Your team does a phenomenal job. Hector and Don Tracy over there definitely know the programs that we have here at the state level, and they take full advantage of them. But the way it's set out basically are for companies that are here in our state. This is probably the only training program that we have, or the incentive program that we have that takes care of businesses that are already here. And so if you're already on ground here in the region here in the state, these are programs that are available for individuals. And so we do these with community colleges.
Well, thanks, Aaron. And, keep your running shoes on, because you are moving fast and you have been. And we just appreciate you so much for all of that. Jeff, I'm going to turn to you. And at ACC, we greatly appreciate Representative Wilson's advocacy with regard to supporting a DEAG grant that we got from the governor's office for the Army Futures Command software factory at ACC's Rio Grande campus. Can you talk a little bit about Representative Wilson's views on the Army Futures Command as a local opportunity for economic development in Central Texas?
Well, certainly. And to be clear, though, one of the best things about this is that, Army Futures Command is about looking forward, right? It is literally in the name, right? And it's about looking forward a long way to see, like, what is the things that we're going to need to be competitive on the global scale for the next 50 years, right? Looking a long scale ahead. And one of the key aspects of that is that the education that's involved, it has to be long looking as well. And that's why you can't just that's why something like Army Futures Command is tied with higher education, is because we have to say, okay, how are we going to get these folks, not just how do we build the machines that we're going to need, but we're having to look at how are we going to educate the people who are going to design design the technologies, build not only come up with the new ideas and the new theoretical concepts, but the baselines of how to get them produced, and then how to the actual labor force, the skilled technical labor force that can do all of that. Whether it's weapons technology is one thing, but the real battlefield of the future is in thought. It's in intellectual property. It's in cybersecurity. There's a million different things, and it's everything from that all the way down to medical technology, right? So 3D printing of medical things is on is Army Futures Command's list as well, right? Everything along that path makes the difference, right? And it's people know, like, every time you use that microwave in your kitchen, that's NASA budget, showing up for you, right? That's it's all from that line, and that produces cascades of additional technological change and growth throughout the economy as it does, right? So that's one of those key things about Army Futures Command, is not just the opportunity that it has, and we have a special opportunity because we're right here in the middle of it where it's going to happen, right? And we have also this is a very rich area for opportunity, and you see that in I think the best example of that, and it's not even Army Futures Command direct related, but if you want to talk, because I'm listening to everyone talk about Workforce Commission, about retooling, retraining. I don't know how many of you know what's going on in Milam County right now, but Milam County is, most people don't even know where it is or what it is, but it's the little county that's right to the east of Williamson. It's just northeast of Austin. And for a long time, it was a old school factory town, like just a whole factory county, right? Alcoa, the aluminum production facility out there, was the whole county. It was the employment base for the entire county. It was an industry area. And when that factory shut down about 10, 15 years ago now, nothing happened. And so that it shut down the community. It was really hard for them. They came in, the company tried to come in and do some retooling and retraining, but it was tough. It was really brutal for that county. And then a few years later, when the power plant shut down that was next to it, then that was an even further devastation for the county. But here's the thing. So you see these things behind me in my office, right? I've got decorations up, right? That poster back there is a painting that's on the side of Rockefeller Center, and the inscription on it is "Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times," right? And the scrolls on either side of it are actually almost the same thing in Chinese. Gifts that were given to me by different people within a month of each other that had no idea that they were connected. But and the reason that's a big slogan for the thing that I always keep over my shoulder and in my office is because understanding the balance of those things is so vital. And why that comes into Milam County? Because what do you do with a facility like an aluminum production plant? Well, it just so happens that takes more electricity to run an aluminum smelting plant than just about anything else in the world. It is a hugely electrical and capacitive process. And so as a result of that shut down factory and that shut down coal-fired power plant have more electrical substations and copper wiring than any place between the Mississippi River and the Pacific Ocean. And you know who needs that? Data farms and encryption farms. And now we're looking at one company in China, Bitmain, has once the Chinese government completely banned encryption, privately owned encryption, divested their entire operation. They're the largest blockchain company in the world. They've divested their entire operation to the US because we allow encryption. Guess where one of their two main centers is now going to be? Right there in Milam County in Rockdale, Texas, because they took a facility that was an echo of an old age, and they had the wisdom to go, hey, let's market this out to see who needs electricity, who needs what we have. Here are the things that we have at our disposal, and who needs them, right? And let's go get those people. And it's been an amazing success. There are now 3 different companies out there taking up that spot. And now we're looking at taking that power plant facility. We're working some things with Texas State Technical College to come in and start taking that as a place where we can train electrical engineers on actual power plant equipment, on hardcore things. And now IBM is looking at coming out to tour the facility and take a look at putting in some of their blockchain operations that they're doing into that facility as part of their work with Texas State Technical College. I mean, there's a lot of, so just as an idea of like, how do these things, an Army Futures Command is just like this, right? It's when you recognize, here are the tools that we have at our disposal, and here's what we have. Not just accepting that this is the way things are and this is the way things are always going to be, but looking forward and using those tools to make something that gets people up and out of their situation and improves the lives of everyone around us. And that is the kind of thinking and the kind of work and the kind of work that is we're going to need as we're coming out of the pandemic, as we're moving forward into a Texas that has double the current population. I mean, it's all going to be necessary.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of the type of innovation, optimization of resources, but the innovation and the collaboration that's going on behind the scenes to make sure that we do optimize the resources that we have available to us. So, great example, Jeff. Thanks for bringing that forward. Harrison, got another question for you, and that's how do you see the agency coordination moving forward in support of expanding pipelines between institutions and the workforce, especially in high skill demands?
Yeah, well, three things would come to mind offhand for our role, and I should say our role in close partnership with Workforce Commission, with TEA, with Governor's Office, and other stakeholders. Because first, I'm going to come back to the data. So the agency, the coordinating board in statute, is the steward of the state's combined educational and workforce data that we make available. We've made available for more than a decade for research, and we have unbelievable data in Texas with from our K-12 schools, our higher education institutions, pretty fine-grained course credit and grade information for individual students, that kind of thing. And we are one of the states that can connect those to our UI wage records, so you can follow what happens with folks through the pipeline. And we do connect that data. So that's the good news. The bad news is that the data has been sort of collected and maintained, again, more with this kind of conventional regulatory mindset. And so it's hard to get at the data. It's hard to work with the data. And so what we're working now in partnership with TWC, with TEA, and a broad network of stakeholders is how do we both modernize that data infrastructure and make the focus on informing decisions, on actionable intelligence. I'm glad Jeff is on this conversation. He and his boss, Representative Terry Wilson, of course, get this right away. We've had great conversations about what does it look like and what kind of infrastructure are we going to need to put together so we can have a more modern, more networked approach to making data available for driving decisions. So we have to understand what's happening with students, what is happening in the labor market, what are the pinch points, what do we need to streamline, where do we need to focus our resources. The second thing that I would highlight is some of the work that we're doing now with institutions and with the Greater Houston Partnership in Houston that we're incubating there. We rebooted an initiative called GradTex. So the GradTex initiative is focused on that some college no credential population. And what we're working on there, and actually going to be rolling out this next month, is more of a comprehensive regional approach. We've got a coordinated marketing campaign, a central intake portal where we can drive traffic. We work closely with institutions that are design partners in this. And so the idea is that you don't want to just expect people to Google around and stumble into the right kind of program and find out what might be available. Like, as you mentioned earlier, Richard, folks might know they need additional training, but might not know what kind of opportunities are available or the value of those opportunities. So if we can sort of drive traffic to one place, help people get informed about those opportunities that are available, here's resources they can tap into, and then engineer a warm handoff to the institution so the institution can do that follow-up. That's a role that we can play, because of course we've got dozens and dozens of universities, 50 different community colleges. We've got a ton of opportunities that are out there, and you can't expect individuals to be familiar with that range of opportunities that are out there. So I'm very excited about that initiative. We've requested funding from the legislature and are already in conversations with chambers and employers and institutions about how we can rapidly scale that work across the state. The third thing that I'd point to is around picking up a point you made earlier around micro-credentials. So we are we don't just need to think in terms of conventional degrees, but also like what are those kinds of courses, learning experiences, work-based learning experiences like internships, apprenticeships, that kind of thing, that have real value for individuals and ought to be recognized by the state. So for example, like if somebody comes to Austin Community College and let's say they take 3 or 4 courses and then they stop out for a while, we would generally say, well, that's a failure of Austin Community College. They're a dropout, they're a stop out. We'll hammer you in your graduation rates. Except what if the trajectory of their earnings changes? And then they come back a couple of years later, they take a few more courses. And then they stop out. Well, again, we say, well, we're not going to give you any credit towards that and actually contributing towards your mission, which is absurd. So instead, what we're planning, what we're excited about working on with our institutions, with employers, and drawing all that data is we need stackable state micro-credentials. So we recognize these achievements. These are important for individuals. They have real value. They're important for our communities. They're important for our state. Now, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting we just start making up a bunch of credentials. It's more to that point that we kicked off the conversation with of making sure that the educational opportunities are aligned with current and emerging job opportunities and that folks have that clear line of sight to a good job of here's how these kinds of courses, maybe plus an internship, can get you a qualification that helps expand opportunities for you and your family. And here's how that can be stacked with other things that maybe that turns into an associate's degree or that turns into a bachelor's degree. So this isn't pie in the sky. That we're going to be moving aggressively across multiple fronts on data, on engaging students earlier, getting them enrolled in our institutions, and working with our institutions on credentials of the future.
Yep.
And Dr. Rhodes, if I can
Yes.
jump in real quick with it, I want to echo that because to go to what you asked me earlier to tie into that, one of the nice things is with that Dr. Keller is absolutely right about that because, and we don't have to start from scratch on that concept either because, our higher education in Texas partnering with Army Futures Command, who does exactly what he just described?
Yeah.
The U.S. military. Right. You don't go in, they don't handle things with their internal credentials for what you're certified to do and what you're certified to be able to handle. You don't go through a 4-year degree program to be able to handle a certain vehicle or to be certified on a pieces of equipment or certain job skills or other things. You do them in sort of quantized, sectioned off sections, and you check that off and you've got this one and you've got this one and you've got this one. That works sort of like a lot like things that you see in the tech world too, right? Where you have like a certification from Microsoft on their systems or certifications on certain programming languages. And that's a big help because it does allow people to say, I can increase my earning potential saying I have this ability, I have this skill set, and I can prove it and I can show it. And we have that model and we have those partners that have that skill set and can help bring that sort of model over too. It's always great when you don't have to start from scratch and we've got those types of things too. It's a great idea and it's very important and it allows people to actually have that because one of the things that you both said that I want to really echo too, there's a bit of conversation about this, but I think it's important to say thinking about education as infrastructure is vital because it is, right? It is intellectual infrastructure as much as intellectual property is property, right? And with any piece of infrastructure, you need maps to guide people from place to place, and recognizing that it is as fundamental to our economy continuing to move and continue to develop as the roads that move things place to place. The education system moves our people from place to place and from level to level in what they're able to achieve and what we're able to accomplish. Sorry, I didn't mean to take up too much extra time, but
that is great. And as I listen to the three of you, I am so thankful that you three are in the positions you're in because, it is music to my ears to hear that, and talking about, stackable credentials. How important that is to individuals. I mean, and we're kind of looking at flipped degree programs to a certain extent get the right skills in their hands to where they can get into the job market, back into the workforce as quickly as possible, but allow them the growth toward the bachelor's degree. And so thank you so much for that. So Aaron, you're back with us. Yeah, we're glad you're back with us. So just one quick thing. So what advice would you give community colleges that are listening today on applying for grant opportunities, and what resources are out there through TWC?
Not much advice, because you guys are doing it. I mean, doing it in big ways, as a matter of fact. And so the resources that are out there, I've mentioned some of them initially, our skills development fund programs that we have. And so we have a one-pager that really lists out the programs that we have, and a lot of them are geared towards community colleges. I encourage colleges to take advantage of those programs. Our skills development fund, our skills for small business program, our JET program. There's a high demand job training and TIP program. All the training that takes place, we want that done through community colleges. And so colleges that are on the line now, and Dr. Rhodes, your team takes advantage of all of those programs in big ways. I encourage you guys to look at those programs. There's an Office of Employer Initiatives here. That's the team that will walk you through the concept. And we've gotten the green light to really take care of business and to make sure that the programs are user-friendly. They're not bureaucratic processes from that standpoint. And we have a team that walks through it. And we've been very successful with those programs. And so I think some of the things that Jeff's talked about, I'm excited about working with Commissioner Keller and his team. I was on a call with them just yesterday, as a matter of fact, talking about some of the internship projects that they have in place, and a number of other initiatives. I always say, when you bring together the worlds of workforce, economic development, and education, that's where our success is. And when we have representatives like Colonel Wilson doing what he's doing from that standpoint, elected leadership that get it, that's the secret sauce in Texas. And so when we bring that together, it's not a surprise that we have 9 governor cups. It's not a surprise that we're 16th year in a row that CEOs are saying Texas is the best place to do business. And so it's the collaboration that takes place. And then Dr. Rhodes, something that you talked about, which was innovation and collaboration equals transformation. Jeff has identified that, and that's what's happening here. And I'm excited to work with Commissioner Keller, Dr. Keller, in this role there, and his team, and Colonel Wilson, and what he's doing there, the excitement that Jeff's bringing to the table from that standpoint. Again, elected leadership that gets it. That's something that we shouldn't take for granted, because other states really don't have that. Our guys have their act together, and that allows us to go forward as a state. And bring it back to the community colleges. They're that education piece that we need, a vital piece, because when you have corporations like Tesla, Orca, that was in the chatbot, and they're looking at coming into our state, they're going to be looking for the training opportunities in that tight pipeline of talent. And if we don't take care of business, they will find a state that has that pipeline of talent. And we want that not to be the case. We want to find that talent here in Texas. And Dr. Rhodes, what you guys are doing at your level, the work is so important, because that's our pipeline of talent that comes for those employers that are out there. So we collaborate and work hand in hand with the colleges. And my advice would be for the colleges to continue forming those relationships and continuing to take advantage of those opportunities that are out there.
Great. And you hit one of the questions that came up on the chat line about Tesla and Oracle. So thanks for doing that, Aaron. And Aaron, I just want to compliment you and TWC for the great work you're doing. And you talked about skills development funds, and and how that has been a tremendous value to industries such as Samsung over the years. So thanks for all your help and moving forward with this. The other thing that I want to see that gives me great optimism is seeing the collaborative approach that is happening between the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and the Texas Workforce Commission and TEA, all working together, with the same goal and same focus in mind. And so thank you for doing that. Demerson, one quick question for you again. You had mentioned OER, Open Educational Resources, earlier, and the importance of that. And at Austin Community College, we started moving in that direction about 4 years ago. And I think it was the first couple of years, we saw that we could save students over $10 million.
Right.
that's just really getting the tip of the iceberg on that. Can you talk a little more about your vision for that in the future?
Yeah. So, of course, one of the big costs of higher education that folks don't talk about as much. Usually, folks are focused on tuition or the cost of room and board and that kind of thing. Of course, those instructional materials have gotten more and more expensive. And so, one of the benefits of having these technology-enabled resources, open educational resources, is that they're free to students. If they want to. A lot of those resources they have the option of paying to print a book if they want to, but they don't have to. They can access all the resources there. But what's even more important and more exciting about this is that open educational resources are set up so you can improve them, adapt them, add to them over time. So it's think moving from Encyclopedia Britannica to moving to Wikipedia. Where you might have resources that have been developed by a faculty member. For example, at Rice University, they have a project called OpenStax, where they're an important leader in this work. Austin Community College faculty member might look at those resources and say, for my students, we're going to have to bring in some other materials to focus on this particular concept, or here's something that I think that we might want to downplay a little bit because I want to emphasize something else over here. And they can adapt that content to meet the needs of their students and their institutions and do that across a broad network. So then what's especially exciting about open educational resources is it gives us a powerful tool to move teaching from being such a solo sport to more where instructors see themselves as part of this broad network of innovators and educators who are continuing to improve and iterate on, add to, keep current their instructional materials. And for students, huge win because it's free to them and they can also contribute to the materials as well. So I'm super excited about this. We got a charge in the last session to stand up a state repository of OER for our higher education institutions. I'm glad that we were able to do that before COVID hit. So we do have a state repository, and then we've got strategic partnerships with 3 institutions here in the state. So with Rice around these core courses, with the Charles A. Dana Center at UT Austin around college readiness materials, especially around mathematics, which of course they're working closely with ACC on that project. And then with Dallas College on workforce education and other colleges partnering with all of these. So I'm very excited about the potential of OER to support what we're doing in digital learning.
Yeah, that helps to answer one of the questions that students are asking that we talked about earlier. How can I afford to pay for it? And, and a lot of people don't realize that, the cost of textbooks and materials in some cases is higher than the tuition rate, especially at community colleges. So
yeah,
thanks for that work on that.
Well, and I will say all of us probably had when we were in school the experience of, well, now there's a 4th edition of the book where they renumbered the problems and made minor tweaks, but you have to spend $60 or $100 or $300 for the latest version of this. So it helps solve that problem too.
All right. We're getting close to the time, but Jeff, I'm going to ask you one last question, and that is, Representative Wilson is new to the chairmanship of House Appropriations. What can you tell us that you've kind of learned through this process as him being chair in relation to the state's economic recovery?
The biggest thing is, I would say, the biggest thing we've learned is from him chairing Article 3 is it's one of those funny things of like how fast things can happen when people bring a good idea together and everyone's willing to get to work together on something, and that the biggest things that slow recovery down is fear. honestly. And people being uncertain or being unwilling to jump on and to make things happen because they're concerned with, well, what could happen? Well, if we don't get this done, what could happen here and what could happen here? And when we spend a lot of our time being concerned about what ifs and what might happens, it stops us from being able to focus on, no, what if positive, right? Let's get this done. Let's spend that energy and that time working towards it. And the reason I say that is I'll give you just the straight up example, which is CTEs, right? And for career and technical education, it is the core of the transition between public education and higher education in this point. And this is, if you look at what A&M is doing right now, right? A&M is really wanting to see CTEs in all of their incoming students. Because if you get a computer science degree, they want you to know that that you've done some electrical training, right? That you have a little bit of engineering on your background, and that you have some that you've done some CTEs that give you some real world skill sets beyond just the intellectual skill sets, right? That you have something that you can apply the things that you're learning, the theory behind at the university, right? They want that combined level. So CTEs are not just like, because it's often put that way of like, CTEs are the things you do in high school if you don't plan to go on to college. No, right? It is like skill sets are needed no matter what you do or what you're planning to go into. I use that example all the time because in our own office, because like I do a lot of programming stuff on the side as a hobby, and just as a skill set that I built up for myself, and I use. It's not something you would expect someone in politics to have to use, but it runs our entire back end of our office, right? The things that I've built some automations and things on the back end, it makes this office run better, right? So it's like, it's about that. It's about the things that you can take things from different disciplines and have different skill sets that build you up. And so for that, one of the things that Representative Wilson focused on this time with his what can he do as Article 3 chair that will make a difference? And the answer to that was P-TECH. And we want to take that is the if y'all know folks who know P-TECH or don't, it is really giving that structure and that background to students to really give them to make sure that the CTEs that are in our schools are very valuable to them. Like that we're making sure that we are putting that, everything that Dr. Keller just said about bringing that data together and knowing like what are the skill sets that actually produce a return on investment for our students that give them a career in something that they can go and do something successful in right away.
Yeah.
And so we want one of the things we're bringing to bear on the CTE for that is I can't give any final numbers because the budget is still a huge question on the as we go into the conference period and as we find out more about the federal side. But we're wanting to bring hundreds of additional schools up to give them the funding to make those long-term decisions on like we are going to say we're going to bring in programs to build electrical engineering CTEs for our schools, that we're going to bring in plumbing, car mechanics, all the things that actually end up with the building the skill sets that are in demand for our economy right now, and giving them the tools that they need to retool their systems, but also to knit things together, because cooperation, right, is literally that, cooperating, right, and co-laboring with each other, and so that our we're doing those dual credit things where our community colleges and our high schools are knitting themselves together and recognizing that teamwork, that sharing of resources makes the difference, right? And because one school may not be able to afford it, but if there's a community college in the area, have a high schooler go to them or have them come to the high school, share those resources, share those teachers, share those things, and get people knit together. Because I tell you, one of those things that's vital for people, just as a psychological thing, is if you can take the class in high school and if you take a dual credit course in high school, you know what you already are when you're done with that class? Registered with that community college.
Right.
You have one little bureaucratic step is out of the way.
Yeah.
And it is completely like not intuitive to people, I think, just as a base thing about how big a difference that makes as to whether a student actually enrolls and continues taking classes.
Right.
Am I going to take classes at the community college next year after I'm a senior? Am I going to go and do a skill set thing? Well, I already took that dual credit class, so I'm already registered there. So, all I have to do is sign up for the classes for next semester. I've already been accepted into the college with my other scores and everything else to take that class. I might as well continue, right? It's one less deadline that can burn things down, right? It makes a big difference.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff, and keep encouraging them. You know, and one thing you talk about in CTE and you know, hands-on skills is it really brings relevance to what they learn in the classroom. And so thanks so much for bringing that forward. And I think we're about out of time, and I'm going to have to turn it back over to Laura. But first, I just want to say thank you to all three of you. Amazing jobs you're doing, and keep up the great work. And Jeff, if you can take back to Terry and just tell him, you know, we really enjoyed meeting with him, and his sense of humor, you know, his passion for the future of this community and this state is unmatched. So just tell him thank you.
Will do. And thank you all very much for this. It was excellent.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just say, I really appreciate three things about your approaches. One, that you're collaborating so authentically. Two, that you're looking at such practical issues like the cost of learning educational materials, getting people registered when they do dual course or dual credit courses. I mean, just looking at it through a practical lens is so important. And then in all of your comments, I just heard such a student focus, and just really thinking about the individual and what does it take for the individual to get onto a successful life trajectory as it relates to skills and work and all of that. So just super thoughtful conversation. And I want to thank you all. And for those of you that are watching, here's some upcoming events that we've got going on at the chamber. And by the way, this is recorded. So if there's something that caught your attention and you want to take another peek at it, that'll be available on our website. But nominations for Austin Gives Generous Business Awards are coming up. Building a Resilient Business is coming up. Mix and Mingle. If you want to have a little online social hour, come on down. And remote return to reopening and looking at what people are going to do once vaccines are in place. And I know that's a conversation we're all in right now, is when do we bring people back? How do we bring people back and all of that? So thank you guys for spending Friday morning with us. Appreciate all of your wise words, and everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.